This lesson is similar triangles. So we've already talked about congruent triangles this year. The symbol for congruence was this. The symbol for similarity looks like this. So congruent means equal. Similar means proportional. It might be twice as big. It might be half as small, something like that. So we're going to model and solve problems using similar triangles. Much like when we did congruent triangles, we had lots of theorems we could talk about. We're not going to prove that triangles are similar, but I do want you to be aware that there are 3 ways that we do that. You can have angle-angle similarity. You just need 2 angles, then the triangles have to be similar. You can have side-side-side similarity, or you can have side-angle-side. So we're just going to look at these problems down here. So if this angle and this angle correspond to each other, they're both 75. And then we know that a triangle equals 180. 180 minus 75 minus 74 is 31. So this angle and this angle correspond to each other. Well, these 2 angles are also going to be 74 and correspond with each other. So the 2 triangles are going to be similar. Okay, let's talk about some other things. So these 2 angles are similar. And then we've already talked about vertical angles this year. So these 2 angles would also be similar. So just picking out which corresponding parts go to each other is what's really going to be key here. Okay, if you look at the next one, the sides can determine if it's similar. So 3 to 6 has a scale factor of 2 because it doubles. 5 to 10 has to have that same scale factor of 2, it does. And 4 to 8 has to have the same scale factor, which it does. Sometimes it's a little harder to see, like if you look at number 4. So I know that these 2 sides are probably going to correspond to each other, but I can put them in my calculator. I'll just do 30 divided by 24, and I get 1.25. So then when I do 35 and 28, I should also get 1.25 if they're similar. 35 divided by 28 is in fact 1.25. And then when I do 12 divided by 25, I get, I cannot read, sorry, that is a 32 divided by 25. I also get, I actually get 1.28. Okay, so that's a little typo of mine, my bad. All 3 of those, when you divide them, they should give you 1.25. Sorry, I made this in a hurry, so my bad. So the next one, kind of the same thing. 8 and 6, when you divide them, you should get the same number. 8 divided by 6 is 1.3 repeating. And then when I do 20 divided by 15, I get 1.3 repeating. And then they also share an angle in between those, so that's why it's side, angle, side. Okay, number 6, pretty much the same thing. Let's look at some problems. Okay, so the first one, we're just going to find the scale factor. So it kind of looks like this triangle has been rotated, which is what has happened. So 15 and 9 look like they're going to be corresponding to each other. So if I do 15 divided by 9 in my calculator, I get 1.6 repeating. It looks like 21 and 35 are going to correspond to each other. So 35 divided by 21, also 1.6 repeating. That's what we want. And then 40 and 24 must also be corresponding. So 40 divided by 24 is 1.6 repeating. So make sure to check and see if the triangle has been rotated so that you can see which sides are proportional to each other. Which, in fact, is what has happened to this next one. So this triangle, it's rotated, but it's also flipped. If you're having a hard time seeing that or figuring out which sides go together, look at the triangle congruent statement or the triangle similarity statement. The first 2 letters AB have to correspond with the first 2 letters of the next one, DF. So AB is right here. DF has to correspond with that one. BC are the last 2 letters. FE are the last two letters, so those two correspond with each other. So this is what we're going to do. This is how we set them up. The triangle on the left corresponds with the triangle on the right. It has to equal triangle on the left compared to the right. So that's how you do congruent statements. Similarity statements. And then the math involved is super easy because it's stuff you've already done before. This is when you would cross multiply. I don't know if you remember that from middle school, but like 9 and 10 would be multiplied to each other, and 6 and 4x minus 13 would be multiplied to each other. So because there's multiple things going on this one, this is when we would distribute. So we'd have 90 equals 24x minus 78. And now I'm going to add 78 to the other side. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 24. So x equals 7. Whoa! I hit the button, sorry. Alright, and that's how you do that. You just make sure you set up corresponding parts, like over top of each other as a fraction, and then you're just going to cross multiply. Same thing with this one. Let's do the one on the left first. So RS is 20. It's the first two letters. It corresponds with RT, which is the big triangle. So 20 over 20 plus 28 is 48. So hopefully you made that connection. And then it gives us SV, which is the last two letters, which corresponds with TU. So I'm going to do 3x minus 2 over 7x minus 3. Okay, and now it's just cross multiplying, which you did in middle school. So 20 times 7x minus 3 equals 48 times 3x minus 2. And now I'm going to use my distributive property. Okay, now I'm going to work to get my x's on one side, my numbers on another. And the last thing I'm going to do is divide by 4. So I find that x equals 9. I hate when my little button doesn't work. Okay. Alright, so what I want you to do is I want you to try the one on the right. I want you to pause the video, see if you can set up the right kind of statement, see if you can cross multiply, and see if you can find what x is, and then you're going to plug it back in the end. So I'm going to give you 3 seconds to pause it, and then I'll go over it. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'm going to work with JH. That's the first and last number. It has to correspond with KH. So 45 over 72 equals. Next I see GH, which is the last two numbers. So that corresponds with IH. So if you are getting confused on how to set it up, use the problem like I am, use the statement. Alright, and now we're going to cross multiply. And we're going to distribute. I'm going to get my numbers on one side, my x's on one side, and I'm going to divide by 63, and I get that x is equal to 19. So, remember that's not what the question asked. The question asked to find GI, which is the entire length. So I'm going to substitute 19 back in. 19 plus 11 is 30. 3 times 19 minus 9 is 48. And if I add 30 and 48, I get 78. So that is my answer. Alright, so I'm going to let you try these two. I want you to pause the video, see if you can figure it out. Maybe just do the one on the left. So set it up, see if you can figure it out, and then we'll talk about it in 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I've set up the problem. Now I'm going to cross multiply. Now I'm going to distribute. Now I'm going to get my like terms together. And then I'm going to divide by 12. So I get 16.5 equals x. But the problem wants me to find SN. So I'm going to replace x with 16.5. So if I times that by 6 and add 1, I get 100 as my answer. So hopefully you did too. And if not, hopefully you can find your mistake. Now let's do the next one. So If the two triangles are similar, and if the perimeter of WXY is 144, we're going to find XZ. So the perimeter of the little one is 144. I'm going to compare that with the perimeter of the big one, so I'm going to add all the sides together. I got 192, and since I want to find XZ is the last two, which corresponds with MN, which is this one, so now I'm just going to set it up. So the big over the little equals the biggest side over the little. And so now I'm going to cross multiply, and I'm going to divide both sides by 192, and I get 51. Alright, and that's how you do those. So every time it's just setting up corresponding sides, cross multiplying, distributing if you need to, getting like terms together. Pretty easy. The math involved is pretty easy. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to help.